John 14. In the quiet hush of the upper room, as the shadows of betrayal began to fall, Jesus looked at his disciples with compassion and calm, and he said, "Do not let your hearts be troubled. You believe in God, believe also in me. In my Father's house are many rooms, spaces of welcome and rest, and if that were not so, would I have told you that I am going there to prepare a place for you? And if I go to prepare a place for you, then surely I will come back and take you to be with me, so that where I am, you also may be." He continued gently, "You know the way to the place where I am going." But Thomas, ever honest, replied, "Lord, we do not know where you are going, so how can we know the way?" And Jesus, with patient love, answered, "I am the way and the truth and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. If you truly know me, you will know my Father as well. From now on you do know him, and you have seen him." Still, Philip asked, "Lord, show us the Father, and that will be enough for us." And Jesus, with deep kindness, said, "Don't you know me, Philip, even after all this time? Anyone who has seen me has seen the Father. How can you say, 'Show us the Father'? Don't you believe that I am in the Father, and the Father is in me? The words I speak are not from myself, but the Father living in me does his work. Believe me when I say that I am in the Father, and the Father is in me, or at least believe because of the works you have seen." And then Jesus offered a promise so deep and beautiful, it stirred the heart. "Very truly, I tell you, whoever believes in me will do the works I have been doing, and they will do even greater things than these, because I am going to the Father. And I will do whatever you ask in my name, so that the Father may be glorified in the Son. You may ask me for anything in my name, and I will do it." And then, with tenderness and clarity, he spoke of love. "If you love me, keep my commands. And I will ask the Father, and he will give you another advocate to help you and be with you forever, the Spirit of truth. The world cannot accept him, because it neither sees him nor knows him, but you know him, for he lives with you and will be in you. I will not leave you as orphans, I will come to you. Before long the world will not see me anymore, but you will see me. Because I live, you also will live." He went on, "On that day you will realize that I am in my Father, and you are in me, and I am in you. Whoever has my commands and keeps them is the one who loves me, and the one who loves me will be loved by my Father, and I too will love them and show myself to them." Then Judas, not Iscariot, asked, "But Lord, why do you intend to show yourself to us and not to the world?" Jesus answered, "Anyone who loves me will obey my teaching. My Father will love them, and we will come to them and make our home with them. Anyone who does not love me will not obey my words. These words you hear are not just mine. They belong to the Father who sent me." He offered comfort still. "All this I have spoken while still with you. But the Advocate, the Holy Spirit, whom the Father will send in my name, will teach you all things and remind you of everything I have said to you." And then came the words that echo through time like a balm for every soul. "Peace I leave with you. My peace I give you. I do not give to you as the world gives. Do not let your hearts be troubled, and do not be afraid. You heard me say, I am going away, and I am coming back to you. If you loved me, you would be glad that I am going to the Father, for the Father is greater than I. I have told you now before it happens, so that when it does happen, you will believe. I will not speak with you much longer, for the prince of this world is coming. He has no hold over me, but he comes, so that the world may learn that I love the Father and do exactly what my Father has commanded me. Come now, let us leave. Romans 8. Therefore, there is now no condemnation for those who are in Christ Jesus, because through him, the law of the Spirit who gives life has set you free from the law of sin and death. What the law was powerless to do, because it was weakened by the flesh, God did by sending his own Son in the likeness of sinful humanity, to be a sin offering. And so he condemned sin in the flesh, in order that the righteous requirement of the law might be fully met in us, who live not according to the flesh, but according to the Spirit. Those who live according to the flesh have their minds set on what the flesh desires, but those who live in accordance with the Spirit focus their thoughts on what the Spirit desires. The mind governed by the flesh leads only to death, but the mind governed by the Spirit brings life and peace. The fleshly mind is hostile to God. It does not submit to his law, nor can it. Those who live in the flesh cannot please God. But you are not in the realm of the flesh, you are in the realm of the Spirit, if indeed the Spirit of God lives in you. And if anyone does not have the Spirit of Christ, they do not belong to Christ. But if Christ is in you, then even though your body is subject to death because of sin, your spirit is alive because of righteousness. And if the Spirit of him who raised Jesus from the dead lives in you, then the one who raised Christ will also give life to your mortal bodies because of his Spirit living in you. Therefore, dear brothers and sisters, we are not obligated to the flesh to live according to it. For if you live according to the flesh, you will die. But if by the Spirit you put to death the misdeeds of the body, you will live. For those who are led by the Spirit of God are children of God. And the Spirit you received does not make you slaves, so that you live in fear again. Rather, the Spirit you received brought about your adoption as sons and daughters, and by him we cry, Abba, Father. The Spirit himself testifies with our spirit that we are God's children. Now, if we are children, then we are heirs, heirs of God and co-heirs with Christ, if indeed we share in his sufferings, in order that we may also share in his glory. And Paul declares, I consider that our present sufferings are not worth comparing with the glory that will be revealed in us. For all of creation waits with eager longing for the children of God to be revealed. The creation was subjected to frustration, not by its own choice, but by the will of the one who subjected it, in hope that the creation itself would be liberated from its bondage to decay and brought into the freedom and glory of God's children. We know that the whole creation has been groaning as in the pains of childbirth right up to this very moment. And not only creation, but we ourselves, who have the first fruits of the Spirit, groan inwardly as we wait eagerly for our adoption, to be fully redeemed in body and soul. For in this hope we were saved. Hope that is seen is no hope at all, for who hopes for what they already have? But if we hope for what we do not yet see, we wait for it patiently. And in the same way, the Spirit helps us in our weakness, for we do not know what we ought to pray for, but the Spirit himself intercedes for us through wordless groans. And he who searches our hearts knows the mind of the Spirit, because the Spirit intercedes for God's people in accordance with his will. And we know with deep certainty that in all things God works for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose. For those God foreknew, he also predestined to be conformed to the image of his Son, that he might be the firstborn among many. And those he predestined, he also called. Those he called, he also justified. And those he justified, he also glorified. What then shall we say in response to these things? If God is for us, who can be against us? He who did not spare his own Son, but gave him up for us all, how will he not also graciously give us all things? Who can bring any charge against those whom God has chosen? It is God who justifies. Who then condemns? No one. For Christ Jesus, who died, and more than that, who was raised to life, is now at the right hand of God, and is also interceding for us. Who shall separate us from the love of Christ? Shall trouble, or hardship, or persecution, or famine, or nakedness, or danger, or sword? As it is written, "For your sake we face death all day long. We are considered as sheep to be slaughtered." No, in all these things we are more than conquerors through him who loved us. For I am convinced that neither death nor life, neither angels nor demons, neither the present nor the future, nor any powers, neither height nor depth, nor anything else in all creation, will ever be able to separate us from the love of God that is in Christ Jesus our Lord. Jeremiah 1. Before Jeremiah ever took a breath, before he was even formed in his mother's womb, the word of the Lord came to him, quiet but clear, saying, "Before I shaped you, I knew you. Before you were born, I set you apart. I appointed you as a prophet to the nations." And Jeremiah, young and unsure, responded, "Alas, sovereign Lord, I do not know how to speak. I am too young." But the Lord replied with reassurance and firmness, "Do not say, 'I am too young.' You must go to everyone I send you to, and say whatever I command. Do not be afraid of them, for I am with you and will rescue you." Then the Lord reached out his hand and touched Jeremiah's mouth, and he said, "I have put my words in your mouth. See, today I appoint you over nations and kingdoms, to uproot and tear down, to destroy and overthrow, to build and to plant." And the Lord gave Jeremiah a vision, a branch from an almond tree, which Jeremiah described. "You have seen correctly," the Lord affirmed, "for I am watching to see that my word is fulfilled." Then another vision came, this time a boiling pot tilting from the north. The Lord explained, "From the north disaster will be poured out on all who live in this land." The people had turned from him to follow other gods, and judgment would come. But the Lord told Jeremiah to get ready, to stand up and speak whatever he commanded. Though the people would resist, the Lord said, "Today I have made you a fortified city, an iron pillar, a bronze wall to stand against the whole land." And though opposition would come, the Lord's promise stood firm. "They will fight against you but will not overcome you, for I am with you and will rescue you." Daniel 3. In the plain of Dura, King Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon built a golden image, a towering statue of shimmering gold, and summoned all his officials to attend its dedication. And at the king's command, a decree went forth. When the music played, everyone must bow down and worship the image. Whoever refused would be cast into a blazing furnace. Among the crowd were Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, 3 men of faith who served the one true God. But they would not bow. And some among the Babylonians, eager to accuse them, went to the king and said, "These Jews you appointed do not serve your gods or worship your golden image." Furious with rage, Nebuchadnezzar summoned them. "Is it true?" he asked. "Now, when you hear the sound of the music, if you are ready to bow, all will be well. But if you do not, you will be thrown into the blazing furnace. Then what God will be able to rescue you from my hand?" With quiet courage and unwavering faith, they answered, "King Nebuchadnezzar, we do not need to defend ourselves in this matter. If we are thrown into the furnace, the God we serve is able to deliver us, and he will rescue us from your hand. But even if he does not, we want you to know, we will not serve your gods or worship the image of gold." This answer enraged the king. He ordered the furnace heated 7 times hotter than usual and commanded his strongest soldiers to bind the men and throw them into the fire. The flames were so intense that the soldiers themselves were consumed as they carried out the command. And into the fire Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego fell, bound and surrounded by flames. But as the king watched, he leapt to his feet in astonishment. "Weren't there 3 men we tied up and threw in?" he asked. "Look, I see 4 men walking around in the fire, unbound and unharmed, and the 4th looks like a son of the gods." Nebuchadnezzar approached the furnace and called out, "Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, servants of the Most High God, come out." And they came, not a hair singed, not a mark of flame on their robes, and even the smell of smoke had not touched them. Then the king declared, "Praise be to the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who sent his angel and rescued his servants. They trusted him and defied the king's command, willing to give up their lives rather than serve any god but their own." And a new decree was made. No one in any nation or language was to speak against their God, for no other God can save in this way. Matthew 11. After teaching and healing in many towns, Jesus spoke about John the Baptist. He reminded the people that John was not just a prophet, but the very messenger foretold, the one who would prepare the way for the Lord. "Truly I tell you," Jesus said, "among those born of women, there has not risen anyone greater than John the Baptist. Yet whoever is least in the kingdom of heaven is greater than he." He spoke of this generation, comparing their hardness of heart to children in the marketplace, never satisfied, always criticizing. "John came neither eating nor drinking, and they say, 'He has a demon.' The Son of Man came eating and drinking, and they say, 'Here is a glutton and a drunkard, a friend of tax collectors and sinners.' But wisdom is proved right by her deeds." Then Jesus began to denounce the cities where he had performed most of his miracles, because they had not repented. He spoke of Chorazin and Bethsaida, saying that if the mighty works done in them had been done in Tyre and Sidon, those cities would have turned long ago. He warned Capernaum that though it thought itself exalted, it would be brought down for ignoring the signs of heaven. Yet in the same moment, Jesus turned his heart heavenward and prayed, "I praise you, Father, Lord of heaven and earth, because you have hidden these things from the wise and learned, and revealed them to little children. Yes, Father, for this is what you were pleased to do." Then he said, "All things have been committed to me by my Father. No one knows the Son except the Father, and no one knows the Father except the Son, and those to whom the Son chooses to reveal him." And then, with a voice as gentle as a whisper and as deep as the ocean, Jesus called out to all who were listening, "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy, and my burden is light." Psalm 46. God is our refuge and our strength, a constant and unshakable help in every time of trouble. So we will not fear, even if the earth gives way beneath us, even if the mountains crumble and fall into the heart of the sea, though its waters roar and foam, and the mountains tremble with its surging. There is a river, steady and pure, whose streams bring gladness to the city of God, the sacred dwelling place of the Most High. God is within her, and she will not fall, for he will help her at the break of day. Nations are in uproar and kingdoms fall, but the Lord lifts his voice and the earth melts away in awe. The Lord Almighty is with us. The God of Jacob is our fortress. Come and see what the Lord has done, the desolations he has brought upon the earth. He makes wars cease to the ends of the earth, breaks the bow, shatters the spear, and burns the shields with fire. He speaks, not in thunder, but in stillness. Be still and know that I am God. I will be exalted among the nations. I will be lifted high in all the earth. The Lord Almighty is with us. The God of Jacob is our safe and eternal dwelling place. Isaiah 40. Comfort, comfort my people, says your God. Speak tenderly to Jerusalem and proclaim that her hard service has been completed. Her sin has been paid for, and she has received from the Lord's hand double for all her sins. A voice cries out in the wilderness, prepare the way for the Lord, make straight in the desert a highway for our God. Every valley shall be raised up, every mountain and hill made low. The rough ground shall become level, and the rugged places a plain. And the glory of the Lord will be revealed, and all people will see it together, for the mouth of the Lord has spoken. Another voice says, cry out. And a reply comes, what shall I cry? All people are like grass, and all their glory is like the flowers of the field. The grass withers, and the flowers fade when the breath of the Lord blows upon them. Surely the people are like grass, but the word of our God stands forever. You who bring good news to Zion, go up on a high mountain. You who bring good news to Jerusalem, lift up your voice with strength and do not be afraid. Say to the towns of Judah, here is your God. See, the sovereign Lord comes with power, and he rules with a mighty arm. His reward is with him, and his recompense accompanies him. Yet he tends his flock like a shepherd, gathering the lambs in his arms and carrying them close to his heart. He gently leads those who have young. Who has measured the waters in the hollow of his hand, or marked off the heavens with the breadth of his hand? Who has held the dust of the earth in a basket, or weighed the mountains on scales and the hills in a balance? Who can fathom the Spirit of the Lord, or instruct the Lord as his counselor? Whom did the Lord consult to enlighten him, and who taught him the right way? Surely the nations are like a drop in a bucket. They are regarded as dust on the scales. He weighs the islands as though they were fine dust. Lebanon is not sufficient for altar fires, nor its animals enough for burnt offerings. Before him all nations are as nothing. They are regarded by him as worthless and less than nothing. To whom then will you compare God? What image will you craft to resemble him? Though the craftsman may shape an idol and overlay it with gold, though silver chains are fashioned for it, these things cannot capture his majesty. Do you not know? Have you not heard? Has it not been told to you from the beginning? God sits enthroned above the circle of the earth, and its people are like grasshoppers. He stretches out the heavens like a canopy and spreads them out like a tent to live in. He brings princes to nothing and reduces the rulers of this world to dust. Lift up your eyes and look to the heavens. Who created all these? He who brings out the starry host one by one and calls forth each by name. Because of his great power and mighty strength, not one of them is missing. Why do you complain, Jacob? Why do you say, Israel, my way is hidden from the Lord, my cause is disregarded by my God? Do you not know? Have you not heard? The Lord is the everlasting God, the creator of the ends of the earth. He does not grow tired or weary, and his understanding no one can fathom. He gives strength to the weary and increases the power of the weak. Even youths grow tired and stumble, and young men fall in exhaustion, but those who hope in the Lord will renew their strength. They will soar on wings like eagles. They will run and not grow weary. They will walk and not be faint. Isaiah 41. Be silent before me, you islands. Let the nations renew their strength. Let them come forward and speak, and let us meet together for judgment. Who has stirred up one from the east, calling him in righteousness to his service? He hands nations over to him and subdues kings before him. With a sword he turns them to dust, with a bow to driven chaff. He pursues them and moves on unscathed, by a path his feet have not traveled before. Who has done this and carried it through, calling forth generations from the beginning? It is I, the Lord. With the first of them and with the last, I am He. The islands have seen it and feared. The ends of the earth tremble. They come together and encourage one another, saying to their neighbors, "Be strong." The craftsman encourages the goldsmith, and the one who smooths with the hammer urges the one striking the anvil, saying, "It is ready." But though they work on idols, they cannot compare with the living God. But you, Israel, my servant, Jacob, whom I have chosen, you descendants of Abraham. My friend, I took you from the ends of the earth, from its farthest corners I called you. I said, "You are my servant." I have chosen you and have not rejected you. So do not fear, for I am with you. Do not be dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you and help you, and I will uphold you with my righteous right hand. All who rage against you will surely be ashamed and disgraced. Those who oppose you will be as nothing and perish. Though you search for your enemies, you will not find them. Those who wage war against you will be as nothing at all. For I am the Lord your God, who takes hold of your right hand and says to you, "Do not fear, I will help you. Do not be afraid, you worm Jacob, little Israel, for I myself will help you, declares the Lord your Redeemer, the Holy One of Israel. See, I will make you into a threshing sledge, new and sharp with many teeth. You will thresh the mountains and crush them, and reduce the hills to chaff. You will winnow them, and the wind will carry them away. The storm will scatter them. But you will rejoice in the Lord and glory in the Holy One of Israel. The poor and needy search for water, but there is none. Their tongues are parched with thirst. But I, the Lord, will answer them. I, the God of Israel, will not forsake them. I will make rivers flow on barren heights and springs within the valleys. I will turn the desert into pools of water and the parched ground into flowing springs. I will plant cedar and acacia, myrtle and olive, and set cypress and pine together, so that people may see and know, may consider and understand that the hand of the Lord has done this, and that the Holy One of Israel has created it. Job 42. At last, Job replied to the Lord with a heart humbled and eyes opened, acknowledging that the Almighty can do all things, and no purpose of his can ever be thwarted. He repeated the Lord's question, "Who is this that obscures my plans without knowledge?" and admitted that he had spoken of things too wonderful for him to understand, truths too deep to grasp. You said, "Listen now, and I will speak. I will question you, and you shall answer me," Job recalled, and then he confessed that, though he had heard of God with his ears, now his eyes had truly seen him. Overwhelmed by the weight of divine majesty, Job repented in dust and ashes. After the Lord had spoken with Job, he turned to Eliphaz the Temanite and rebuked him and his two friends, saying his anger burned against them because they had not spoken what was right about him, unlike his servant Job. The Lord instructed them to take 7 bulls and 7 rams and go to Job to offer a burnt offering for themselves. And he declared that his servant Job would pray for them, and he would accept Job's prayer, so he would not deal with them according to their folly. Eliphaz, Bildad, and Zophar obeyed the Lord's command, and the Lord accepted Job's prayer. Then, in quiet wonder, Job's life turned from ashes to abundance. The Lord restored his fortunes, even giving him twice as much as he had before. His brothers and sisters and all who had known him came and dined in his house, comforting him for the hardship he had endured, each one bringing him silver and gold as a gesture of kindness and restoration. The Lord blessed the latter part of Job's life more than the former. He possessed 14,000 sheep, 6,000 camels, 1,000 yoke of oxen, and 1,000 donkeys. He also had 7 sons and 3 beautiful daughters, whom he named Jemimah, Kezia, and Keren-Happuch. In all the land, no women were found as lovely as Job's daughters, and their father gave them an inheritance alongside their brothers. After all these things, Job lived 140 years. He saw his children and their children to the 4th generation. And Job died, old and full of days, his heart at peace with God and man. Psalm 18. With a heart overwhelmed by deliverance, David spoke the words of this song to the Lord, the day when the Lord had rescued him from the hand of all his enemies and from the hand of Saul. He began with a declaration of love. I love you, Lord, my strength. He called the Lord his rock, his fortress, and his deliverer, his refuge and shield, the horn of his salvation, and his stronghold. He had cried out to the Lord, who is worthy of all praise, and he was saved from his enemies. The cords of death had entangled him, and floods of destruction overwhelmed him. The grave's snares wrapped around him, and he was gripped by distress. But in his anguish, he called upon the Lord, and his cry reached heaven, into the very presence of God. Then the earth trembled, and the heavens shook, because the Lord came down. Smoke rose from his nostrils, and fire from his mouth. He parted the heavens, and descended with darkness under his feet. He rode upon a cherub and flew, soaring on the wings of the wind. He made darkness his covering, thick clouds his pavilion, and out of the brightness of his presence came hail and blazing coals. The Lord thundered from heaven. The voice of the Most High resounded. He shot arrows and scattered the enemy. Bolts of lightning routed them. The valleys of the sea were exposed, and the foundations of the earth laid bare at his rebuke. From on high, he reached down and took hold of David. He drew him out of deep waters. He rescued him from his powerful enemy, from foes too strong for him. They confronted him in the day of disaster, but the Lord was his support. God brought him out into a spacious place. He rescued him because he delighted in him. The Lord dealt with David according to his righteousness, according to the cleanness of his hands. He kept the ways of the Lord and did not turn aside to wickedness. To the faithful, God showed himself faithful. To the pure, he showed himself pure. He saved the humble but brought low the haughty. The Lord was his lamp, lighting his darkness. With God, he could advance against a troop, and by God's strength he could scale any wall. God's way was perfect, and his word was flawless. He was a shield for all who take refuge in him. God armed him with strength and made his way secure. He made his feet like the feet of a deer and enabled him to stand on the heights. He trained his hands for battle and supported him with a saving shield. His help made him great, and his path was wide beneath him, so that his ankles did not give way. David pursued his enemies and overtook them. He crushed them so they could not rise. With God's help, he subdued nations and was delivered from violent people. He praised the Lord among the nations, singing of his name. For the Lord gives great victories to his king and shows unfailing love to his anointed. Psalm 27. The Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? He is the stronghold of my life. Of whom shall I be afraid? When the wicked advance to devour me, it is they who stumble and fall. Though an army surrounds me, my heart will not fear. Even if war breaks out against me, I will remain confident. One thing I ask from the Lord, and only one do I seek, that I may dwell in the house of the Lord all the days of my life, to gaze upon the beauty of the Lord, and to seek him in his temple. For in the day of trouble, he will keep me safe in his dwelling. He will hide me in the shelter of his sacred tent and set me high upon a rock. Then my head will be exalted above the enemies who surround me. In his tent I will sacrifice with shouts of joy. I will sing and make music to the Lord. Hear my voice when I call, Lord. Be merciful and answer me. My heart says of you, seek his face. Your face, Lord, I will seek. Do not hide your face from me. Do not turn away in anger. You have been my helper. Do not reject me or forsake me, God my Savior. Though my father and mother forsake me, the Lord will receive me. Teach me your way, Lord. Lead me in a straight path because of my oppressors. Do not hand me over to their desires, for false witnesses rise against me, breathing out violence. Yet I remain confident of this. I will see the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living. Wait for the Lord. Be strong and take heart, and wait for the Lord. Ezra 8. Ezra gathered those who were returning from exile, those whose hearts stirred to leave Babylon and return to Jerusalem under the gracious hand of God. He recorded the heads of families and listed those who accompanied him, men from the line of Phinehas and Ithamar, descendants of David, and others whose lineage reached back to Israel's noblest houses. They assembled near the Ahava Canal, where they camped for 3 days. There, Ezra discovered that no Levites had joined the company, and so he sent leaders to seek out servants of the temple. By God's favor, they brought back men of wisdom and devotion, including Sherebiah, a man of insight, and his family, as well as other Levites and temple servants to assist with the house of God. As they prepared to set out on the long journey to Jerusalem, Ezra proclaimed a fast beside the river, humbling themselves before God and seeking his protection for themselves, their children, and all their possessions. He had been ashamed to ask the king for soldiers and horsemen to guard them along the way, because he had told the king, "The gracious hand of our God is on everyone who looks to him, but his anger is against all who forsake him." So they fasted and prayed, seeking God's care, and he answered their prayer. Ezra then selected 12 of the leading priests and entrusted to them the sacred offerings, the silver, the gold, the articles of worship, all gifts freely given by the king and his counselors and by the people of Israel for the house of their God. He weighed out the treasure in their presence and charged them to guard it carefully until it was delivered in Jerusalem, where it would be weighed again in the chambers of the temple. With hearts lifted in faith and reverence, they departed from the Ahava Canal on the 12th day of the first month. God's hand was upon them, shielding them from enemies and ambush along the way. After many days, they arrived safely in Jerusalem. They rested 3 days before presenting the offerings at the house of God. Each item was weighed and recorded by name, confirming the trust that had been kept. Then the returning exiles offered burnt offerings to the God of Israel, 12 bulls for all Israel, 96 rams, 77 lambs, and 12 male goats as a sin offering, all consumed in worship and gratitude. Finally, they delivered the king's orders to the governors beyond the river, who supported the people and honored the work of God. Nehemiah 2. In the month of Nisan, in the 20th year of King Artaxerxes, Nehemiah stood before the king, bearing wine as part of his duty. Though he had never been sad in the king's presence before, that day sorrow weighed heavily upon his face. The king noticed and asked, "Why does your face look so sad when you are not ill? This can be nothing but sadness of heart." With deep fear, yet filled with resolve, Nehemiah answered, "May the king live forever. Why should my face not be sad when the city where my ancestors are buried lies in ruins, and its gates have been destroyed by fire?" The king asked what he wanted, and Nehemiah silently prayed to the God of heaven before responding. Then he said, "If it pleases the king, and if your servant has found favor in your sight, send me to the city in Judah where my ancestors are buried, so that I can rebuild it." The king, with the queen seated beside him, asked how long he would be gone. Nehemiah gave him a time, and it pleased the king to send him. He also asked for letters, one for the governors of the region to ensure safe passage, and another for Asaph, keeper of the royal forest, to supply timber for gates, walls, and the house he would occupy. Because the gracious hand of God was upon him, the king granted all he asked. Nehemiah left with official letters and a military escort. When he reached the land beyond the Euphrates, he presented the letters, but not everyone rejoiced. Sanballat the Horonite and Tobiah the Ammonite were greatly disturbed that someone had come to promote the welfare of the Israelites. Nehemiah arrived in Jerusalem and rested 3 days. Then, under the cover of night and with a few men, he quietly inspected the walls. Mounted on his horse, he passed through the valley gate, toward the Jackal Well and the Dung Gate, surveying the crumbled ruins and the fire-damaged gates. The path was so broken that at one point he could no longer proceed on horseback. After examining the condition of the walls, he returned through the valley gate. Until then, he had not told the officials, priests, nobles, or anyone else what God had placed on his heart. But now he gathered them and said, "You see the trouble we are in. Jerusalem lies in ruins, and its gates have been burned. Come, let us rebuild the wall of Jerusalem, and we will no longer be in disgrace." He told them how the hand of God had been upon him and what the king had said. Their hearts were stirred, and they replied, "Let us start rebuilding." So they began this good work. But when Sanballat, Tobiah, and Geshem the Arab heard of it, they mocked and ridiculed the effort, asking, "What is this you are doing? Are you rebelling against the king?" Nehemiah answered with quiet strength, "The God of heaven will give us success. We, his servants, will start rebuilding. But as for you, you have no share in Jerusalem or claim to its history." Job 1. In the land of Uz lived a man named Job, blameless and upright, who feared God and shunned evil. He was a man of great wealth and integrity, blessed with 7 sons and 3 daughters, and vast herds of livestock, 7,000 sheep, 3,000 camels, 500 yoke of oxen, and 500 donkeys, with many servants. He was the greatest man among all the people of the East. His children often feasted in one another's homes, each taking turns to host, and they invited their sisters to join in the celebration. After each round of feasting, Job would rise early and offer burnt offerings for each of them, saying, "Perhaps my children have sinned and cursed God in their hearts." This was his regular practice, a father interceding in quiet reverence. One day, the angels came to present themselves before the Lord, and Satan also came among them. The Lord asked him where he had come from, and Satan replied that he had been roaming the earth, going back and forth. Then the Lord said, "Have you considered my servant Job? There is no one on earth like him, blameless, upright, a man who fears God and shuns evil." But Satan challenged, "Does Job fear God for nothing? Have you not placed a hedge around him and his household and blessed the work of his hands? But stretch out your hand and strike all he has, and he will surely curse you to your face." The Lord answered, "Very well, everything he has is in your power, but do not lay a finger on the man himself." And so Satan left the presence of the Lord. That day, disaster struck swiftly. A messenger came to Job and said that the oxen were plowing and the donkeys grazing nearby when the Sabeans attacked and carried them off, killing the servants. While he was still speaking, another arrived, reporting that fire from the heavens fell and burned up the sheep and the servants. Another came with news that the Chaldeans had raided the camels. Finally, the last messenger arrived with the most crushing blow. His sons and daughters had been feasting when a mighty wind struck the house, and it collapsed, killing them all. Job stood, tore his robe, and shaved his head in grief. Then he fell to the ground in worship and said, "Naked I came from my mother's womb, and naked I will depart. The Lord gave, and the Lord has taken away. Blessed be the name of the Lord." In all this, Job did not sin by charging God with wrongdoing. 2 Kings 4. A widow of one of the prophets came to Elisha in desperation, her voice trembling as she spoke of her husband's death and the creditor who now threatened to take her 2 sons as slaves. Elisha asked what she had in her house, and all she could offer was a small jar of olive oil. But that small jar became the vessel of a miracle. Elisha instructed her to borrow as many empty jars as she could find, then to pour oil from her own jar into them, shutting the door behind her with her sons. As she poured, the oil kept flowing, filling every jar until there were no more left. Then the oil stopped. She came back to Elisha, and he told her to sell the oil, pay her debts, and live on the remainder with her sons. Sometime later, Elisha often passed through Shunem, where a well-to-do woman showed him hospitality. She recognized him as a holy man of God and prepared a room for him on the roof, with a bed, table, chair, and lamp. In gratitude, Elisha wanted to bless her, and though she had no son and her husband was old, he promised that by the next year she would cradle a child in her arms. And just as he had said, she gave birth to a son. Years passed, and one day the child grew ill in the field and died. With unshaken determination, the mother rode to find Elisha, fell at his feet, and poured out her sorrow. Elisha returned with her, entered the room where the child lay, and prayed earnestly. Stretching himself out over the boy, he brought warmth and breath back into the child's lifeless body. The boy sneezed 7 times and opened his eyes, and Elisha gave him back to his mother, alive and whole. Later, a famine gripped the land. Elisha returned to Gilgal, where a stew was being prepared, but a wild vine had been mistakenly added, bringing poison into the pot. When the men cried out that the food was deadly, Elisha calmly added flour to the stew, and it became safe to eat. Finally, a man came with 20 loaves of barley bread and fresh grain, offering it to Elisha. Though the food seemed too little for the 100 men gathered, Elisha declared that the Lord had said, "They will eat and have some left over." And it was so. They ate and were satisfied, and there was food left just as the Lord had promised. 1 Chronicles 16. David, filled with joy, brought the ark of God into the tent he had prepared in Jerusalem, and he offered burnt offerings and fellowship offerings before the Lord. After blessing the people in the name of the Lord, he gave each man and woman in Israel a loaf of bread, a cake of dates, and a cake of raisins. He appointed some of the Levites to minister before the ark, to give praise and thanks to the Lord, the God of Israel. Among them were Asaph, Zechariah, Jael, Shemiramoth, Jehiel, and others, each with their instruments, lyres, harps, and cymbals, raising a sound of worship in sacred celebration. That day, David first committed to Asaph and his associates this beautiful song of thanks to the Lord. Give praise to the Lord, proclaim his name, make known among the nations what he has done. Sing to him, sing praise to him, tell of all his wonderful acts, glory in his holy name. Let the hearts of those who seek the Lord rejoice. Look to the Lord and his strength, seek his face always. Remember the wonders he has done, his miracles, and the judgments he pronounced. He called on Israel to remember how God chose Abraham, made an everlasting covenant, and gave them the land of Canaan. Though they were few in number, he protected them as they wandered. Do not touch my anointed ones, he warned kings on their behalf, and do my prophets no harm. David's song turned outward to the nations, calling all the earth to sing to the Lord and proclaim his salvation day after day. Declare his glory among the nations, his marvelous deeds among all peoples. For great is the Lord and most worthy of praise. He called on families of the earth to ascribe glory and strength to the Lord, to bring an offering and come before him, to worship in the splendor of holiness. The heavens and earth were invited into the praise. Let the sea resound and all that is in it. Let the fields be jubilant and everything in them. Let the trees of the forest sing for joy before the Lord, for he comes to judge the earth. He ended the song with a cry of hope and assurance. Give thanks to the Lord, for he is good. His love endures forever. Cry out, Save us, God our Savior. Gather us and deliver us from the nations, that we may give thanks to your holy name and glory in your praise. Blessed be the Lord, the God of Israel, from everlasting to everlasting. Then all the people said, Amen, and praised the Lord. David left Asaph and his brothers to minister before the ark continually. He appointed others to serve at the tabernacle at Gibeon, offering sacrifices and maintaining praise day and night. With hearts united in worship, Israel rejoiced, and David returned to bless his household. 2 Chronicles 20. A great multitude came against Jehoshaphat, armies from Moab, Ammon, and Mount Seir. Alarmed, the king resolved to seek the Lord and proclaimed a fast throughout Judah. People from every town gathered to seek help from the Lord. Jehoshaphat stood before the assembly in the temple courts and cried out, Lord, the God of our ancestors, are you not the God in heaven? You rule over all kingdoms and nations. Power and might are in your hand, and no one can withstand you. He reminded God of his past faithfulness, of how he had given the land to Abraham's descendants. He acknowledged their helplessness and concluded with humble faith. We do not know what to do, but our eyes are on you. Then the Spirit of the Lord came upon Jahaziel, a Levite, and he spoke with divine boldness. Do not be afraid or discouraged because of this vast army, for the battle is not yours, but God's. You will not have to fight this battle. Take up your positions, stand firm, and see the deliverance the Lord will give you. Jehoshaphat bowed low with his face to the ground, and all the people fell in worship. Early the next morning, they set out with courage, and Jehoshaphat appointed singers to go ahead of the army, praising the beauty of holiness and saying, Give thanks to the Lord, for his love endures forever. As they began to sing and praise, the Lord set ambushes against the enemy armies, and they turned on each other in confusion. By the time Judah arrived, they saw only dead bodies. No one had escaped. The spoils were so abundant that it took 3 days to collect them. On the 4th day, they gathered in the valley of Berakah, where they praised the Lord for his mighty deliverance. They returned to Jerusalem with joy, harps, lyres, and trumpets, for the Lord had given them great cause to celebrate. The fear of God fell on all the kingdoms around them, and peace came to Jehoshaphat's reign, for God had fought the battle. 1 Samuel 30. David and his men returned to Ziklag on the 3rd day, only to find their city laid waste, their homes burned, and their loved ones taken. While they had been away, the Amalekites had raided the Negev and Ziklag, capturing the women and children but killing no one. Yet the grief was overwhelming. Wives, sons, daughters all taken, and nothing left but smoke and ash. David and his men lifted up their voices and wept until they had no strength left to cry. Even David's own men, embittered by the loss of their families, spoke of stoning him. But in this darkest of hours, David found strength in the Lord his God. He turned to Abiathar the priest and asked for the ephod, seeking guidance. And when David inquired of the Lord, asking whether he should pursue the raiding party and whether he would overtake them. The answer came clear and bold. Pursue them. You will certainly overtake them and succeed in the rescue. So David set out with 600 men. But when they reached the Besor Valley, 200 were too exhausted to continue and remained behind. With the remaining 400, David pressed on. Along the way, they found an Egyptian left behind by the Amalekites, starving and near death. After giving him water, food, and care, the man revived and revealed that he had been with the raiding party. He promised to guide David to the Amalekites, as long as his life was spared. Led by this former servant, David found the Amalekites scattered across the land, eating, drinking, and celebrating their plunder from Ziklag and beyond. Without hesitation, David and his men attacked at twilight and fought through the next day, and none of the enemy escaped except for 400 young men who fled on camels. David recovered everything the Amalekites had taken: wives, children, and all possessions. Nothing was missing. He brought it all back, and he also captured flocks and herds, which were declared as David's spoil. When they returned to the 200 men who had stayed behind at the Besor Valley, some of the warriors who had gone into battle spoke harshly, saying those who had stayed behind should not share in the plunder. But David rebuked them. "No, my brothers," he said, "you must not do that with what the Lord has given us. He has protected us and delivered into our hands the raiding party that came against us." And David established a lasting principle. Those who stay with the supplies are to share equally with those who go into battle. Upon returning to Ziklag, David sent portions of the plunder to the elders of Judah, saying, "Here is a gift for you from the enemies of the Lord." And he sent to various towns where he and his men had roamed, strengthening bonds and honoring the Lord's faithfulness. 2 Samuel 22. David sang to the Lord the words of this song when the Lord delivered him from the hand of all his enemies and from the hand of Saul. With a heart full of gratitude, he lifted up a song of deliverance, proclaiming, "The Lord is my rock, my fortress, and my deliverer. My God is my rock in whom I take refuge, my shield and the horn of my salvation. He is my stronghold, my refuge, my Savior. From violent men you save me." He recalled how he had called to the Lord in his distress, and how from his heavenly temple God heard his voice and his cry reached his ears. Then David described the might of the Lord, how the earth trembled and quaked, how smoke rose from his nostrils, and consuming fire came from his mouth. He saw the heavens part as the Lord came down, riding on a cherub, soaring on the wings of the wind, shrouded in darkness, wrapped in thunderclouds, blazing with lightning. The Lord thundered from heaven. The voice of the Most High resounded. He reached down and took hold of David, drew him out of deep waters, rescued him from powerful enemies, too strong for him, from those who confronted him in the day of disaster. But the Lord was his support. He brought him out into a spacious place, for he delighted in him. David declared that the Lord dealt with him according to his righteousness, rewarding the clean hands and upright heart, for he had kept the ways of the Lord and had not turned to evil. With the faithful, God showed himself faithful. With the blameless, he was blameless. With the pure, he was pure, but with the devious, he showed himself shrewd. God saved the humble, but humbled the proud. He turned David's darkness into light, armed him with strength, made his way perfect. He made David's feet like the feet of a deer, and enabled him to stand on the heights. He trained David's hands for battle and shielded him with salvation. David pursued his enemies and did not turn back until they were destroyed. By God's power, he shattered nations and rose above those who opposed him. The Lord gave him great victories and showed unfailing kindness. David praised the Lord among the nations, singing of his name, declaring that the Lord gives his king great victories and shows unfailing kindness to his anointed, to David and his descendants forever. 1 Kings 19. After the dramatic confrontation on Mount Carmel, word reached Jezebel of all Elijah had done, how he had called down fire from heaven and slain the prophets of Baal. Consumed with fury, she sent a message to Elijah, vowing to take his life by the next day. Afraid and worn down, Elijah fled for his life. He journeyed to Beersheba in Judah, left his servant there, and continued alone into the wilderness. There, under a solitary broom bush, he sat down, overwhelmed, and prayed that he might die. "I have had enough, Lord," he said. "Take my life. I am no better than my ancestors." And he lay down and slept. But an angel touched him, gently waking him, and said, "Get up and eat." He saw bread baked over hot coals and a jar of water. He ate and lay down again. The angel returned a second time, touched him, and said, "Get up and eat, for the journey is too much for you." Strengthened by that food, Elijah traveled 40 days and nights until he reached Horeb, the mountain of God, where he took refuge in a cave. The word of the Lord came to him, "What are you doing here, Elijah?" He replied with weariness, "I have been very zealous for the Lord. The Israelites have rejected your covenant, torn down your altars, and put your prophets to death. I am the only one left, and now they are trying to kill me too." The Lord told him to go out and stand on the mountain in his presence. A powerful wind tore through the mountains, but the Lord was not in the wind. Then came an earthquake, but the Lord was not in the earthquake. After that, a fire, but again, the Lord was not in the fire. And then came a gentle whisper. When Elijah heard it, he pulled his cloak over his face and stood at the entrance of the cave. And once more the voice asked, "What are you doing here, Elijah?" And he repeated his lament. Then the Lord gave him new instructions, telling him to anoint Hazael as king over Aram, Jehu as king over Israel, and Elisha as prophet in his place. God reminded him that he was not alone, that he had reserved 7,000 in Israel who had not bowed to Baal nor kissed him. Elijah went and found Elisha, son of Shaphat, plowing with 12 yoke of oxen. As he passed by, he threw his cloak over him, and Elisha left everything behind, ran after Elijah and said, "Let me kiss my father and mother goodbye, and then I will come with you." Elijah agreed, and Elisha returned, slaughtered his oxen, burned his plowing equipment to cook the meat, gave it to the people, and followed Elijah, becoming his servant. Joshua 1. After the death of Moses, the servant of the Lord, the mantle of leadership passed to Joshua, son of Nun, and the Lord spoke directly to him, saying, "Moses, my servant, is dead. Now then, you and all these people must get ready to cross the Jordan River into the land I am about to give to them, to the Israelites." The Lord assured Joshua that every place where he set his foot would be given to him, just as he had promised Moses, stretching from the vast desert to Lebanon, from the Euphrates River to the Mediterranean Sea. God declared that no one would be able to stand against Joshua all the days of his life, and just as he had been with Moses, he would be with him too. He would never leave him nor forsake him. Then came the charge. "Be strong and courageous," the Lord said, "because you will lead these people to inherit the land I swore to their ancestors to give them." And again he repeated it, commanding Joshua to be strong and very courageous, to be careful to obey all the law given through Moses, not turning from it to the right or the left, so that he would be successful in all that he did. God urged Joshua to keep the book of the law always on his lips, to meditate on it day and night, so that he would be careful to live by its words, for then he would prosper and walk in wisdom. And one more time, with tender insistence, God spoke, "Have I not commanded you? Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged, for the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go." So Joshua gave orders to the officers of the people, telling them to get provisions ready, for in 3 days they would cross the Jordan to take possession of the land the Lord was giving them. He reminded the tribes of Reuben, Gad, and the half-tribe of Manasseh of their promise to support their fellow Israelites, even though they had already received their inheritance on the eastern side of the Jordan. And they responded with wholehearted allegiance, saying, "Whatever you have commanded us we will do, and wherever you send us we will go. Just as we fully obeyed Moses, so we will obey you. Only may the Lord your God be with you, as he was with Moses." And so, with courage and unity, the people prepared to step into the promises of God. Judges 6. In those days, once again, the Israelites did evil in the eyes of the Lord, and as a result, God gave them over to the oppressive hands of the Midianites for 7 long, bitter years. The power of Midian was so overwhelming that the Israelites made hiding places in the mountains, in caves and strongholds, and whenever they planted their crops, the Midianites, along with the Amalekites and other eastern peoples, would sweep down like a swarm of locusts, devouring the land and leaving nothing behind: no sheep, no oxen, no donkeys. They came up with their livestock and tents, invading like a relentless tide, and Israel was brought so low that they finally cried out to the Lord for help. When they cried out because of Midian, God sent them a prophet who reminded them of their history, of how the Lord had brought them up out of slavery in Egypt, had driven out powerful nations before them, and had given them the land. But the prophet also rebuked them, saying, "You did not listen to the voice of the Lord your God." Then, in a quiet moment, the angel of the Lord came and sat under the oak in Ophrah, which belonged to Joash the Abiezrite, and there, hiding from the Midianites, was his son Gideon, threshing wheat in a winepress to keep it from being stolen. The angel appeared and said, "The Lord is with you, mighty warrior." But Gideon, burdened and doubtful, replied, "Pardon me, my Lord, but if the Lord is with us, why has all this happened to us? Where are all his wonders our ancestors told us about?" He asked why God had abandoned them. Then the Lord turned to him and said, "Go in the strength you have and save Israel out of Midian's hand. Am I not sending you?" But Gideon, still unsure, replied, "How can I save Israel? My clan is the weakest in Manasseh, and I am the least in my family." And the Lord answered him with patience and power, "I will be with you, and you will strike down all the Midianites, leaving none alive." Wanting reassurance, Gideon asked for a sign and prepared a young goat, bread without yeast and broth. The angel told him to place the meat and bread on a rock, and when he did, the angel touched it with the tip of his staff. Fire flared from the rock, consuming the offering, and the angel disappeared. In awe and fear, Gideon cried out, "Alas, sovereign Lord, I have seen the angel of the Lord face to face." But God spoke peace to him, saying, "Do not be afraid, you are not going to die." So Gideon built an altar there and called it, "The Lord is Peace." That night, God gave him a bold instruction: tear down his father's altar to Baal and cut down the Asherah pole beside it. Then build a proper altar to the Lord and sacrifice a bull on it, using the wood from the idol. Gideon obeyed, but did it at night, afraid of his family and the townspeople. When the people discovered the desecrated altar in the morning, they demanded his death. But Joash, Gideon's father, defended him, saying, "If Baal is really a god, let him defend himself." So Gideon was called Jerub-Baal, meaning, "Let Baal contend with him." Then the Midianites and Amalekites gathered, crossing the Jordan and camping in the valley of Jezreel. But the Spirit of the Lord came upon Gideon. He blew a trumpet, and the Abiezrites rallied behind him, as did men from Manasseh, Asher, Zebulun, and Naphtali. Yet still uncertain, Gideon asked God for a sign with a fleece, first asking for dew only on the fleece, then for dew on the ground, but the fleece dry. And both times God answered exactly as he requested. 1 Samuel 1. There was a man named Elkanah from the hill country of Ephraim, a man of noble heritage, who had 2 wives, Peninnah, who had children, and Hannah, who had none. Though Elkanah loved Hannah deeply, her womb remained closed, and her rival, Peninnah, constantly provoked her, taunting her with cruelty year after year, especially when they went to the house of the Lord in Shiloh. Elkanah would give portions of the sacrifice to Peninnah and all her children, but to Hannah he gave a double portion, because he loved her and longed for her joy. Still Hannah wept and would not eat, and when her husband asked, "Why are you downhearted? Don't I mean more to you than 10 sons?" her pain remained. 1 year, after they had finished eating and drinking at Shiloh, Hannah rose and went to the tabernacle. Deeply anguished, she poured out her soul before the Lord, weeping bitterly and praying silently, her lips moving though no sound came out. She made a vow, saying, "Lord Almighty, if you will look on your servant's misery and remember me, not forgetting your servant but giving her a son, then I will give him to the Lord all the days of his life, and no razor will ever touch his head." As she prayed, Eli the priest watched her, and mistaking her silent prayer for drunkenness, he rebuked her. But she answered humbly, "Not so, my lord. I am a woman deeply troubled. I have not been drinking. I was pouring out my soul to the Lord." Then Eli answered with grace, "Go in peace, and may the God of Israel grant you what you have asked of him." Her heart was lightened, and her face no longer downcast. The next morning, Elkanah and Hannah worshipped the Lord and returned home to Ramah. And in time, the Lord remembered her. Hannah conceived and gave birth to a son, naming him Samuel, saying, "Because I asked the Lord for him." When the time came to go up to Shiloh again, Hannah stayed behind until the boy was weaned. Then, keeping her vow, she brought Samuel to the house of the Lord, bringing with her a 3-year-old bull, flour, and wine. She presented him to Eli and said, "I am the woman who stood here beside you praying to the Lord. I prayed for this child, and the Lord has granted me what I asked. So now I give him to the Lord. For his whole life he will be given over to the Lord." And there, in that sacred place, Samuel worshipped the Lord. Leviticus 26. The Lord spoke to the people through Moses, delivering a message filled with both promise and warning, a covenant set before them like a path that could lead either to flourishing or to ruin. He began with a call to purity and worship. "Do not make idols, or set up images or sacred stones for yourselves. Do not place carved stones in your land to bow down before them. I am the Lord your God." Then he reminded them of the rhythm of holiness he had established, the reverence for his Sabbaths and awe for his sanctuary, a command to be followed in heart and deed. God spoke of blessings that would overflow like the rains in season, promising that if they followed his decrees and were careful to obey his commands, he would send showers upon their land, and the earth would yield its harvest. Trees would bear fruit in abundance, and their threshing would continue until grape harvest, and grape harvest would continue until sowing time. They would eat all the food they wanted and dwell in safety, surrounded not by fear, but by peace. The Lord himself would grant them protection, and wild beasts would not threaten them. Swords would not pass through their land. Victory would be theirs over enemies, with even a few able to chase many, and the fear of the Lord would make them strong. He promised to show them favor, to make them fruitful and increase their numbers. He would keep his covenant so full and overflowing that they would still be eating the old harvest when it came time to make room for the new. He would set his dwelling place among them, walk among them, and be their God, and they would be his people. "I am the Lord your God," he declared, "who brought you out of Egypt, so that you would no longer be slaves. I broke the bars of your yoke and enabled you to walk with heads held high." But then came the sober warning. If they refused to listen and failed to carry out his commands, if they rejected his decrees and broke his covenant, then consequences would follow. Terror, disease, and fever would drain their strength. They would plant seed in vain, for their enemies would eat the harvest. God would set his face against them, and they would be defeated, ruled by those who hated them. If even then they did not listen, he would punish them 7 times over, breaking their stubborn pride and making the sky like iron and the earth like bronze, unyielding, hard, and dry. Their strength would be spent in vain, the land would not yield its crops, and the trees would not bear fruit. If they continued to walk in hostility toward him, God would bring more severe afflictions. Wild animals would rob them of their children, destroy livestock, and make them few in number. If that still didn't awaken them, the sword would come against them. They would be struck with plagues in their cities, and God himself would bring famine. Their food supply would be so scarce that 10 women would bake bread in one oven and dole it out in meager portions. And if they still resisted, they would descend into even deeper judgment, the most horrifying kind, where fear and desperation would consume them. God warned that he would lay waste to their cities, devastate their sanctuaries, and refuse their offerings. He would scatter them among the nations, drawing out his sword against them. Their land would become desolate, enjoying its Sabbath rests that had been denied for years. Those who survived would be filled with fear, even at the sound of a wind-blown leaf, and they would waste away because of their sins and the guilt of their ancestors. Yet, even in this judgment, there was a door to mercy. God spoke of those who, in the midst of suffering, would confess their sins and the sins of their ancestors, their unfaithfulness and hostility. When their uncircumcised hearts became humble and they paid for their sin, then God would remember his covenant with Jacob, Isaac, and Abraham. Though the land would be left desolate and they would suffer for their disobedience, God would not reject or destroy them completely, for he is the Lord their God. He would remember the covenant with their ancestors, whom he brought out of Egypt in the sight of all nations. These were the decrees, laws, and regulations the Lord established between himself and the Israelites through Moses on Mount Sinai. Numbers 11. Not long after they left Sinai, the people began to grumble and complain about their hardships, and the Lord heard their cries. His anger burned against them, and fire from the Lord broke out among them, consuming the outskirts of the camp. The people cried out to Moses, and he prayed to the Lord, and the fire died down. They named that place Taberah, because fire from the Lord had burned among them there. But the complaining didn't end. The rabble among them began to crave other food, and soon the Israelites joined in their wailing, crying out, "If only we had meat to eat! We remember the fish we ate in Egypt at no cost, also the cucumbers, melons, leeks, onions, and garlic. But now we have lost our appetite. We never see anything but this manna." The manna, like coriander seed and resin, would fall with the dew, and the people gathered it daily, grinding or cooking it into cakes that tasted like something baked with olive oil. Yet, despite this miraculous provision, they despised it. Moses heard the people of every family wailing at the entrances of their tents, and the Lord became exceedingly angry. Moses was troubled, overwhelmed by the burden of the people's complaints. He cried out to the Lord, "Why have you brought this trouble on your servant? What have I done to displease you that you put the burden of all these people on me? Did I give them birth? Why do you tell me to carry them in my arms, as a nurse carries an infant, to the land you promised? Where can I get meat for all these people? They keep wailing to me, 'Give us meat to eat.' I cannot carry all these people by myself. The burden is too heavy. If this is how you are going to treat me, please go ahead and take my life, if I have found favor in your eyes, and do not let me face my own ruin." Then the Lord answered Moses with compassion and wisdom. He told him to bring 70 of the elders of Israel to the tent of meeting. There God took some of the Spirit that was on Moses and placed it on the 70 elders, and when the Spirit rested on them, they prophesied. 2 men, Eldad and Medad, who had remained in the camp, also received the Spirit and began to prophesy. A young man ran to tell Moses, and Joshua urged him to stop them. But Moses replied, "Are you jealous for my sake? I wish that all the Lord's people were prophets, and that the Lord would put his Spirit on them." Then the Lord answered the people's craving for meat, not with just enough to satisfy them, but with abundance that would test their hearts. He said, "Tell the people, consecrate yourselves in preparation for tomorrow, when you will eat meat. You have wailed, saying you were better off in Egypt. Therefore the Lord will give you meat, and you will eat it. Not for 1 day, or 2, or 5, or 10, or even 20, but for a whole month, until it comes out of your nostrils and you loathe it, because you have rejected the Lord who is among you and have wailed before him." Moses questioned how such a feat could be possible with so many people. But God said, "Is the Lord's arm too short? Now you will see whether or not what I say will come true." And true it was. A wind from the Lord drove in quail from the sea, and they fell around the camp in great numbers. The people gathered them greedily all day and night, and the next day storing piles of meat. But while the meat was still between their teeth, before it could be fully chewed, the Lord's anger burned against them, and he struck them with a severe plague. They called that place Kibroth Hattaavah, which means graves of craving, because there they buried the people who had yielded to their lustful appetite. After that, the people moved on to Hazeroth, where they stayed for a time. Exodus 3. One day, while tending the flock of his father-in-law Jethro, the priest of Midian, Moses led the sheep far into the wilderness until he reached the sacred mountain of Horeb, the mountain of God. As he guided the animals through the rugged terrain, he saw something strange. There, within the quiet of the desert, a bush was engulfed in flames, yet the fire did not consume it. Fascinated by this mysterious sight, Moses said to himself, "I must go over and see this strange sight, why the bush does not burn up." And as he stepped closer, the voice of God called to him from within the flames, "Moses, Moses." Moses answered, "Here I am." But the voice warned, "Do not come any closer. Take off your sandals, for the place where you are standing is holy ground." Then God declared, "I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob." And Moses, filled with awe and fear, hid his face, afraid to look at the presence of God. The Lord spoke again, saying, "I have indeed seen the misery of my people in Egypt. I have heard them crying out because of their slave drivers, and I am concerned about their suffering. So I have come down to rescue them from the hand of the Egyptians, to bring them up out of that land into a good and spacious land, a land flowing with milk and honey, the home of the Canaanites, Hittites, Amorites, Perizzites, Hivites, and Jebusites. God continued, "Now the cry of the Israelites has reached me, and I have seen the way the Egyptians are oppressing them. So now, go. I am sending you to Pharaoh to bring my people, the Israelites, out of Egypt." But Moses, overwhelmed and unsure, said to God, "Who am I that I should go to Pharaoh and bring the Israelites out of Egypt?" And God answered him with gentle assurance, "I will be with you. And this will be the sign to you that it is I who have sent you. When you have brought the people out of Egypt, you will worship God on this mountain." Yet Moses asked again, "Suppose I go to the Israelites and say to them, 'The God of your ancestors has sent me to you,' and they ask me, 'What is his name?' Then what shall I tell them?" And God said to Moses, "I am who I am. This is what you are to say to the Israelites, 'I am has sent me to you.'" Then God added, "Say to them, 'The Lord, the God of your ancestors, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, has sent me to you. This is my name forever, the name you shall call me from generation to generation." God then instructed Moses to gather the elders of Israel and tell them what had been revealed, that God had seen their suffering and would bring them out of Egypt to a land flowing with goodness and abundance. He told Moses that the elders would listen, and together they would approach Pharaoh and ask to take a 3-day journey into the wilderness to offer sacrifices to the Lord. But God also warned that the king of Egypt would not let them go unless compelled by a mighty hand. So God said, "I will stretch out my hand and strike the Egyptians with all the wonders I will perform among them. After that, he will let you go." And God promised to touch the hearts of the Egyptians, so that the Israelites would not leave empty-handed, but would go with silver, gold, and clothing given freely by their neighbors, as a sign of divine favor and justice. Exodus 15. Then Moses and the Israelites sang a song to the Lord, their hearts overflowing with awe and joy, for God had just delivered them from the mighty hand of Pharaoh and his armies. Their voices rose in unison, proclaiming, "I will sing to the Lord, for he is highly exalted. Both horse and driver he has hurled into the sea. The Lord is my strength and my defense. He has become my salvation. He is my God, and I will praise him, my father's God, and I will exalt him." They sang of the Lord as a warrior, mighty and majestic in battle, declaring that Pharaoh's chariots and his army had been thrown into the depths of the Red Sea. The finest of Egypt's officers had sunk like stones into the mighty waters, swallowed by the deep in a moment of divine judgment. "Your right hand, Lord, was majestic in power. Your right hand shattered the enemy," they cried. "In the greatness of your majesty, you threw down those who opposed you. Like fire devouring stubble, God's anger consumed them, and by the blast of his nostrils the waters piled up. Waves stood firm like a wall, deep waters congealed in the heart of the sea. The enemy had boasted, 'I will pursue, I will overtake them, I will divide the spoils. I will gorge myself on them and destroy them with my sword.' But the Lord blew with his breath, and the sea covered them. They sank like lead in the mighty waters." The song lifted higher, proclaiming, "Who among the gods is like you, Lord? Who is like you, majestic in holiness, awesome in glory, working wonders?" For God stretched out his right hand, and the earth swallowed his enemies. In unfailing love, God led the people he had redeemed. With strength and care, he guided them to his holy dwelling. The nations would hear and tremble. The people of Philistia, Edom, Moab, and Canaan would melt away in fear, their hearts filled with dread as they heard of the wonders of the Lord. Terror and dread will fall on them, the people sang, for by the power of your arm they will be as still as a stone until your people pass by, Lord. And they declared with confidence, you will bring your people in and plant them on the mountain of your inheritance, the place, Lord, you made for your dwelling, the sanctuary your hands established. The Lord reigns forever and ever. Then the song faded, and the story continued with the image of the waters of the Red Sea returning to their place, covering Pharaoh's horses, chariots, and horsemen, even as the Israelites had walked through the sea on dry ground. And then Miriam, the prophet, the sister of Aaron, took up a tambourine, and all the women followed her, dancing with joy, tambourines in hand. Miriam led them in song, sing to the Lord, for he is highly exalted. Both horse and driver he has hurled into the sea. Afterward Moses led the people away from the sea and into the desert of Shur. For 3 days they wandered without finding water. Then they came to Marah, but could not drink the water there because it was bitter. So the people grumbled, and Moses cried out to the Lord. The Lord showed him a piece of wood, which Moses threw into the water, and it became sweet. There God issued a command and a test, saying, if you listen carefully to the Lord your God and do what is right in his eyes, if you pay attention to his commands and keep all his decrees, I will not bring on you any of the diseases I brought on the Egyptians, for I am the Lord who heals you. Then they came to Elim, where 12 springs and 70 palm trees awaited them, and they camped there by the refreshing waters. Genesis 18. On a hot day, as Abraham sat at the entrance of his tent near the great trees of Mamre, he looked up and saw 3 men standing nearby. Sensing something divine in their presence, he hurried from his tent to meet them, bowing low to the ground in reverence and hospitality. If I have found favor in your eyes, my lords, he said, do not pass your servant by. Let a little water be brought, and then you may all wash your feet and rest under this tree. Let me get you something to eat, so you can be refreshed, and then go on your way. They agreed, and Abraham rushed into the tent to Sarah, urging her to quickly make fresh bread from the finest flour. Then he ran to his herd, selected a choice, tender calf, and gave it to a servant to prepare. He brought curds, milk, and the meat, and served them under the shade of the tree while he stood nearby, attentive. As they ate, the men asked him, "Where is your wife Sarah?" He replied, "There, in the tent." Then one of them said, "I will surely return to you about this time next year, and Sarah, your wife, will have a son." Sarah, listening at the entrance of the tent, laughed quietly to herself. She thought, "After I am worn out and my husband is old, will I now have this pleasure?" But the Lord said to Abraham, "Why did Sarah laugh? Is anything too hard for the Lord? I will return to you at the appointed time next year, and Sarah will have a son." Sarah, afraid, denied laughing, but the Lord gently said, "Yes, you did laugh." When the men rose to leave, they looked down toward Sodom, and Abraham walked with them to see them off. Then the Lord pondered, "Shall I hide from Abraham what I am about to do, since he will surely become a great and powerful nation, and all nations on earth will be blessed through him?" The Lord knew Abraham would teach his children and household to keep the way of the Lord by doing what is right and just. So he revealed his plan, saying, "The outcry against Sodom and Gomorrah is so great, and their sin so grievous, that I will go down and see if what they have done is as bad as the outcry that has reached me." The men turned and went toward Sodom, But Abraham remained standing before the Lord. With bold humility, Abraham approached God, asking, "Will you sweep away the righteous with the wicked? What if there are 50 righteous people in the city? Far be it from you to do such a thing." The Lord replied, "If I find 50 righteous people in the city of Sodom, I will spare the whole place for their sake." Abraham continued, reducing the number, 45, then 40, then 30, 20, and finally 10, each time receiving the Lord's assurance that he would not destroy the city for the sake of those few. When the Lord had finished speaking, he departed, and Abraham returned to his tent, having interceded for the lives of those in a city lost in wickedness. Genesis 32. As Jacob went on his journey, the angels of God met him along the way. When he saw them, he recognized the place as sacred and named it Mahanaim, meaning 2 camps. But his mind was heavy with the thought of facing his brother Esau, from whom he had fled many years ago. So Jacob sent messengers ahead to Edom, to the land of Seir, where Esau lived. He instructed them to say, "Your servant Jacob says, I have been staying with Laban and have remained there until now. I have cattle, donkeys, flocks, male and female servants. Now I am sending this message to my Lord, that I may find favor in your eyes." The messengers returned with news that Esau was coming to meet him, and with 400 men. At this, Jacob was terrified and deeply distressed. In fear, he divided the people and flocks into 2 groups, thinking, "If Esau comes and attacks one group, the other may escape." Then he turned to God in heartfelt prayer, saying, "O God of my father Abraham, God of my father Isaac, Lord, you who told me to return to my country and my relatives, and promised to make me prosper, I am unworthy of all the kindness and faithfulness you have shown me. Save me, I pray, from the hand of my brother Esau, for I fear he will come and attack me and my family." Jacob reminded God of his promise to make his descendants as numerous as the sand of the sea, which cannot be counted. That night he selected a generous gift for Esau, 200 female goats, 20 male goats, 200 ewes, 20 rams, 30 female camels with their young, 40 cows and 10 bulls, and 20 female donkeys and 10 males. He instructed his servants to go ahead in droves, spacing the animals out, and told them to say to Esau, "They belong to your servant Jacob. They are a gift sent to my lord Esau, and he is coming behind us." Jacob hoped that by sending this gift ahead, Esau's anger might be appeased and his heart softened before they met. That night, Jacob remained alone after sending his family and possessions across the stream. And as the darkness surrounded him, a mysterious man appeared and wrestled with Jacob until daybreak. When the man saw he could not overpower Jacob, he touched his hip socket and wrenched it. Still, Jacob clung to him. The man said, "Let me go, for it is daybreak." But Jacob replied, "I will not let you go unless you bless me." The man asked, "What is your name?" "Jacob," he answered. Then the man said, "Your name will no longer be Jacob, but Israel, because you have struggled with God and with humans and have overcome." Jacob asked the man's name, but he received no answer. Instead, the man blessed him there. Jacob named the place Peniel, saying, "It is because I saw God face to face, and yet my life was spared." As the sun rose, Jacob limped away, touched forever by the divine encounter, a changed man with a new name and a renewed purpose. 2 Corinthians 12. Though boasting is of little value, Paul says, he must go on, and he begins to speak of visions and revelations from the Lord, not to elevate himself, but to reveal the mystery of God's work. He recalls a man in Christ, whether in the body or out of it, he does not know, only God knows, who was caught up to the third heaven, and again, whether it was in the body or out of the body, Paul cannot say, but God knows. And this man was caught up to paradise and heard inexpressible things, words that no human is permitted to tell, divine whispers meant only for the soul. Paul continues, saying that he will boast about such a man, but not about himself, except in his weaknesses. Even if he should choose to boast, he would not be a fool, for he would be speaking the truth. But he refrains, so that no one will think more of him than is warranted by what he says or does. And to keep him grounded, to keep him from becoming proud because of these surpassingly great revelations, he was given a thorn in his flesh, a messenger of Satan, to torment him, to humble him, and to draw him closer to grace. 3 times he pleaded with the Lord to take it away, to lift the burden, to silence the pain. But the Lord said to him, "My grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness." And so Paul declared, "Therefore I will boast all the more gladly about my weaknesses, so that Christ's power may rest on me." He goes on to say that for Christ's sake, he delights in weaknesses, in insults, in hardships, in persecutions, in difficulties. For when he is weak, then he is truly strong, because in his emptiness, God's fullness flows. With gentle rebuke, Paul tells the Corinthians that he has made a fool of himself, but they drove him to it. He ought to have been commended by them, for though he is nothing, he is in no way inferior to the so-called super-apostles. The marks of a true apostle, signs, wonders, and miracles, were performed among them with great perseverance, and yet he asks, what is it they felt deprived of, except that he did not burden them financially? A matter for which he now asks their forgiveness, with a soft irony. Now he is ready to visit them a 3rd time, and still he will not be a burden, because he does not seek what they have, but rather who they are. Just as children should not have to save up for their parents, but parents for their children, Paul says he will spend everything he has for them, and even spend himself completely. And if he loves them more, will they love him less? Be that as it may, he has not been a burden to them. Some might say he was crafty, that he tricked them, but Paul assures them that he and those he sent, like Titus and the brother who accompanied him, did not exploit them. Did they not walk in the same footsteps, follow the same spirit? Paul ends with a deep concern, that perhaps when he comes, he may not find them as he wants them to be, and they may not find him as they wish either. He fears there may be discord, jealousy, fits of rage, selfish ambition, slander, gossip, arrogance, and disorder. He fears that when he comes again, his God will humble him before them, and he will grieve over many who have sinned earlier and have not repented of the impurity, sexual sin, and debauchery in which they have indulged. Yet even in this, his words do not end with condemnation, but with sorrow and a longing for restoration. For in Paul's weakness, the strength of Christ is always seeking to lift the broken,